You're listening to Cards to the Moon, a podcast about trading cards from both a collector and investor perspective. We hope you'll stick around for the ride as we take a deep dive into the state of the hobby, share some hot takes, hopefully some useful advice, and fun stories along the way. Hey, we're back with episode 14 of Cards to the Moon. Welcome to all our listeners out there. My name is Clark, and with me on this episode, as always, is Hyung and John. So before we get into it, for our regular podcast listeners, you might have felt shortchanged in last week's episode because in our Pick One segment, where each of us put up two cards or athletes, and we debate which one we'd rather invest in, I actually didn't take my turn. And, I thought I had a pretty good one, but really, it was just because we ran out of time at the end of last week's episode. So today, I'll lead off the Pick One segment at the end of the show, and we'll make sure to have all three of us play today. I just want to clear that out right off the top. Also, right off the top, John, you reminded us of that crazy story about those two identical Dak Prescott autograph cards from the Dallas Card Show. And I believe they were both graded, one by PSA and the other by SGC. But that's all I have in terms of details. John, do you have anything else to share or give us more context to that story?
Yeah, so for those who follow Jeff Wilson from Sports Card Investor, he reported this story on his Instagram account, and I think he released a video as well.
Cool video.
So it's very well produced. For sure. So it's a 2016 Panini Prism Dak Prescott gold autograph. At the Dallas Card Show, numbered 5 out of 10. Two of them were discovered together. So one of the owners just happened to run into the other owner, started talking about trades, and they noticed that they had the exact same card, which is absolute crazy story. But as you dig into it, everyone knows, I got back into the hobby not too long ago, less than 2 years ago. So I was not aware of, for those that have been in it longer, they're very aware of the Dak Prescott auto pen issue, which is, for those that don't know, Dak Prescott, when he was signing his rookie autographs, had apparently an autographing machine that you just slide the card under and it just starts autographing nonstop, where he doesn't have to autograph it himself.
That's unreal.
I guess it was admitted, or Panini admitted to it, and they allowed people to send in their auto pen cards to receive a brand new card of the same stock, which was certified and autographed by Dak Prescott himself. Somehow, clearly in this situation, somebody maybe didn't send in their submission, but they got one back, and whatever happened, or somebody backdoored and leaked one of them out. But there's two 5 out of 10s that exist. We don't know if there's two 4 out of 10s and there's two 1 out of 10s, but people know now there's two graded 5 out of 10s exist, which is such a wild story and just like a wild uncovering.
Yeah, they're saying that they interviewed I guess Jeff Wilson interviewed the two owners, and at first they're saying how their hearts dropped. Think you're at a card show and you kind of see that. What does that tell you about your investment, right? It's
right,
because that's a 5-figure card.
Yeah,
right.
It's a monster investment, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, but the question they're saying at the end, they're saying, does it become less valuable because now that gold prism is usually out of 10, so there's only 10 in existence? Does it become less valuable because you have a duplicate, right? Or is it more valuable because there's a story behind it, right? It becomes more collectible, and that was kind of like where I guess Sports Card Investor left it at. So I personally think it's a cool story, and like Jeff's right. He probably has both cards now. He was saying how it would be even better if both cards were owned by the same owner. That's when it'll be worth a lot. And then I was thinking He made a deal off camera, and then he's gonna basically have them both, right? So, but I think it's a wild story.
Yeah, I mean, if this story continues to catch wind, I really hope for the two owners' sake that it's only the 5 out of 10s that were duplicated, because that just makes for like an amazing story. And if somebody ends up buying both and continues to sell them as a pair, I think they can be very valuable. But the issue is if two 1 out of 10s appear, two 2 out of 10s appear, then this story doesn't become unique anymore, right? So I guess that's a scary part for these guys that are holding onto these two cards, right?
So the SGC label was the one that they're saying that was like auto pen, and the PSA is kind of like re-stickered as like Panini certified, but he was claiming the owner was claiming that he took it to like BGS and they're authenticating the auto, just looking at the auto, and they said they would authenticate it as like a authentic auto, right? So they're looking at kind of like the comparing the autos, and they're claiming that they're identical, but I obviously that's a little biased probably, but yeah, I mean there's two sides to each story, but I'd be a little concerned, but at the end of the day I think it's gonna be valuable in the long run. It's just a big story, right? So I think a lot of people are gonna catch wind. So
and Jeff just had a quick update. Jeff Wilson had a quick update today saying that he has some insider information about some more details of what happened. And apparently he's going to release another video this week. So I'm looking forward to hearing that video or seeing the video.
All right, cool. I don't have anything else to say, but agreeing with both of you, that's a pretty wild story. And the fact that they found it at the same card show, that's crazy.
What are the chances?
But yeah, we'll see what Jeff Wilson comes up with, and maybe we'll provide another update on our next podcast episode. All right, then with that, let's go ahead now with our first official segment, Hobby Headlines. So most of the time on this show, we talk about buying and selling cards. But this episode, I wanted to get into a third popular option, which is trading cards. And to tell you the truth, I really haven't traded at all since getting back into the hobby. It's different than when we were kids, obviously, where we just trade with our friends in person, and we of course trust our friends. But today, trading is done most likely with someone you don't know or you met for the first time. And sometimes we're talking about trading high value cards too, right? So, there's always questions of security when it comes to trading that come to my mind right off the bat. Hyung and John, I know you guys have actually traded with others, so I feel like in this episode you'll be doing a lot of the talking, and I'll just have a lot of questions. All right. Maybe we can start though with some trades you guys have actually done and how you began the trade process. Like, where do you go to find good trading partners? Where do you start?
Go ahead, John. You want to share your story?
Yeah, so I did a couple of trades recently. Surprisingly, I did them off of Kijiji, which I'm sure a lot of people would probably find as one of the more riskier routes to take.
Yeah. I've never made a Kijiji trade, but
I know. But I mean, there are ways to kind of protect yourself, right? Like you can ask the guy if he's got an eBay account. You can ask them if they have an IG account. You can start to see if they have a lot of followers, if they're pretty legit.
Right.
Obviously, it'd be always good to take the conversation offline and get cell phone numbers exchanged. And then, throughout the process, as I was talking to some of these guys, it seemed pretty apparent that they were, straight as an arrow. They're not, like taking me for a ride. When I asked to meet at a police station, there was no hesitation. There wasn't any, pushback from their side. So everything kind of checked out. I don't know if this is a good thing to do, but I kind of like to kind of throw in something a little bit personal to make them feel comfortable, and I feel like they will give it back to me. So sometimes I'll say something like, "Oh, I can't meet that day because I got to pick up the kids." Something to do with family.
Right.
They'll right away see that I'm a family man, and actually on both occasions they responded with the same thing, saying, "Oh, actually I have kids on my own. I totally understand." And those kind of conversations make you feel a little bit comfortable. That helps you to trust to have these deals go down. But I mean, at the same time, it's the con artists, like really good con artists that are able to get you really comfortable at the same time, right? So I'll knock on wood. I probably got really lucky, but Yeah.
Right. So you made two recent trades. You mentioned. You mind telling us what you made?
Yeah, so I picked up a 96 Kobe Skybox Premium.
Nice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then a 2000, we talked about it in the last couple of episodes, but the 2001 SB Authentic Tiger Gold PSA 10.
Wow.
That was a
Yeah.
big one. That one I had to meet at a police station, and we had to go. We had to go.
I was like, well, next thing you know, you have guys going to police stations for these trades. Love it.
Yeah, I actually have a police buddy who was able to vouch and made sure that if we show up to the police station, no cops are gonna kind of come to us and say like, hey, what are you guys doing here or whatever. So he was able to give the station a heads up.
What did you trade for the Tiger card?
Oh man, the Tiger, I gave up some cards that I didn't want to give up, but I just wanted. I knew that this was a card that wouldn't show up on eBay. It's not gonna really be circulated, so I gave two of the main pieces in the trade was Otani Sapphire PSA 10 and 2017 Mahomes Select Premier PSA 10.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're looking at
two big cards.
Two pretty big cards. So if for those out there, if you do your 130 point, you can quickly see what kind of value we're talking about.
Sure.
But yeah.
So when you go to the police station, do you just meet outside the station? Like what?
Yeah, we actually just met at the parking lot. So most stations have a parking lot, and
Okay, good.
yeah, I've heard other it gave me comfort because I had some other friends who did police stations, and if they were approached by cops, they would tell the cops, hey, I'm actually just making a transaction, and it's for our safety, and they'd be like, okay, yeah, no problem. I haven't heard of people having issues with that, so.
No, I've actually heard that's one good tip for just meeting people in general to make any kind of transaction, like on Facebook Marketplace
Right.
or beyond sports cards. So that's a legit tip, I think.
I think the reason why I like trades personally is it's a good way to either kind of like cash out sometimes on a card. So let's just say you have a bigger card. I like to trade down, for instance. Like it might be hard to sell. Let's just say it's a $2,000 card. It might be harder to liquidate, or you take base cards instead that are easier to sell. Maybe
I see. Yeah.
You trade down, right? So it's a good way to cash out sometimes when you have cards that aren't as liquid, I'd say.
Right.
And vice versa. My goal as a collector / investor is to kind of trade up sometimes, right? For instance, there's a time when that Jordan Alvarez Orange Wave, it was a pop one, was available, and the guy just wanted to cash out, but I had a bunch of, cards that I submitted that were base cards. I think it was like the Juan Soto's, a bunch of Juan Soto's 2018 update that I pulled from packs, right? That I've submitted, and it's a good way to kind of buy into a card where you don't have a lot of money invested in. So I ended up, putting some PayPal towards it and a bunch of base cards that I pulled, and I ended up obtaining that card for way less than, I guess what they associate. You'll see it on like the forums or something. It'll say TV, and what that event means is it's trade value, right? So they'll mark a trade value associated with it and what they expect to get in return. And usually you could find it through like comps, just like any other, when you're buying or whatever, you always look at comps. So it's pretty much the same concept there. And I guess the first time I traded, I was a little nervous, I guess, because usually it wasn't local. It was usually you're doing trades online, and sometimes it involves, pretty high figure cards, right? But for me, I always, took the extra effort to always, ship it next day air or, expedite it. I that's kind of the reason why I also stay in the higher value card game is, the freight justifies, if you're fighting for, the $3.45 of, a stamp, and, it doesn't come with tracking, and you're dealing with, lower amount cards, right? Like it just, for me, it's just a lot of work. So, the next day air, you mingle like a $30-$40, into $2,000 card. You could make efficient trades. It could show up the next day. They're happy. They've accomplished what they've wanted to accomplish and stuff like that. And a good way to kind of, to sum everything up, a good way to kind of, I guess, have, I would say an ease at heart where you're not so worried is, I think building credibility online is important for every individual, right?
Sure.
So it's like you could do that through, Facebook groups, because you're obviously your profile's linked to Facebook, and then, Instagram, people build their accounts that do multiple deals with other people. You see them interacting with people. Sometimes I don't even need, to have vouchers. Usually in like a Facebook group or something, you'll ask people to vouch for someone. Clark, if you made a deal with me, can you vouch? Give me a positive kind of like vouch or whatever, saying that I'm good.
Right.
That's kind of how you clear your name, right? So the more present you are, kind of like online, whether it's the forums, whether it's the websites, whether it's like John said, like eBay. I always look at eBay feedback. It'll tell you right away, like, and it's funny, this is kind of off topic, but on eBay feedback, I seen a guy on the scammers page. There's a scammers Facebook page that had 100% positive feedback with something like 16 positive feedbacks. But then you look at all the positive feedbacks, they were negative. They're like, this guy never paid for it, because you can't leave like a comment. So they got like ripped off, but then it still said positive feedback, which made no sense. I'm like, this is stupid, right? Like eBay fix it, right?
Huh.
So it was basically non-payers. They would bid and use it for shilling, I guess, that account. But anyways, going off topic a bit, but
Right.
yeah. So
No, those are, you mentioned a lot of good tips, and I didn't even think about the whole idea of trading down to liquidate some to cash out, like you mentioned.
Right.
That's something I never even considered. Like I'm always thinking about trading up,
Right.
But that's a really good point you bring up. When you say you ship next day air, how do you know that the other guy is going to ship their card?
Right.
Other than looking at the credibility, is there something more practical you can do?
For sure. I mean, that's at the end of the day, depending on value, if you guys are, on a lower end deal, then you guys are going to have to kind of figure that out for yourself. And that's kind of why I put that disclaimer. It's where if it's a $3,000 card that we're trading, or it's a $3,000, trade value card, I expect the other party to kind of, it doesn't have to be next day, but, it can't be, just untracked mail where it just shows up whenever it gets there. It's the practice is you guys ship it the same day, and if it's not, they're aware. Both parties are aware of when it's being shipped out and stuff like that. But all the due diligence that you're doing kind of like before is so important. Like for instance, the guy, I made that Jordan trade. I see him post all the time, making deals, because I'm always on the Facebook pages as well. So I think just as long as you do your due diligence, I kind of forget about it, to be honest, and go on to the next. And then I think I've done probably over 20 trades, I'd say, in the last, couple years. And I really haven't had any bad experiences, to be honest. And usually it's helped me grow, if anything, right? So, and you meet new people that are phenomenal. Like John said, like it's awesome to be able to find someone off Kijiji, and the first impression you have on the guy is like, oh, who is this guy? And then all of a sudden you guys are talking about the same thing, and being so passionate about cardboard that it's there's hope in people, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. There's definitely good people
that's
out there.
that's like we were talking about underrated plays last week. That could be an underrated play, going on Kijiji.
Absolutely.
And then making those trades in those forums after doing your due diligence, right? To make sure it's the trade as secure as possible. But nice.
I've never done a deal on IG. For me, that seems crazy, to be like sending a $5,000 card in the mail and just hoping the other guy is solid enough to return the other trade the other way, right?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. It's like that's another thing. It's like usually some people in the hobby too, like if you have like zero credibility. So if you're not like, known, you don't have people that vouch for you, they won't ship out their card until they receive it. I've had to do that on blow up forums when I started, right? Is like, it was a higher end trade, and he's the one who listed the trade, and I was the one who approached him with the proposal, and he agreed. Right. But he agreed until he, receives it, because his feedback was good. I was the newer guy, so usually in that case, I have no problem shipping it out. This guy's credible, I see him always, posting, so it's not like he's not known, right? So in that case, I didn't mind sending it first. And then once he receives it, everything checks out, and he sends it, and a week later I have my card, right? So there's that too. If you're new, you're gonna have to build credibility at the end of the day. I wouldn't trust just anybody shipping out a $5,000 card or a $3,000 card. It has to make sense at the end of the day, right? You just have to do your due diligence, do your homework, and the more you do that just constantly, the easier it gets, is what I'm saying, right? It's like you're building your own profile that kind of the community knows you, right? And I've met so many people in this hobby just online, Facebook, and it's going to be so much easier when we go to live card shows too. It's like you're literally on your Instagram, shooting live or whatever, and then they're like, "Yo, you at this card show? I'm here too. Let's meet up." And then boom, you have some friends, some deals, and that's when the hobby becomes fun, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I can't wait.
I know, that's what we talked about. I can't remember which episode, but when you build your credibility to that level, you could easily trade high-end cards just like that. Right. Especially, that's why I love seeing those, like, even Sasha T on YouTube, and there's a host of others now growing in influence because of these high-end trades, but they built up that network, they built up that credibility over the past few years.
And I think that also helped me when I was getting into the game. There's on Facebook they have the scammers page, so it's like that was the first thing, is like, that was kind of like the Bible, like the first thing you gotta make sure you have, just to make sure you cover. And I was so paranoid at the beginning because, there wasn't a lot of information on it, right? It's, you kind of just, figure it out. And people are so, seasoned in the hobby right now. They just list at TV 4,200, PayPal, 3,800 or whatever, right? And people are like, what does that mean? Like the newer people at least, right? So it's now kind of a standard practice, I'd say, in trading is a standard practice. It's always been a standard practice in the hobby, and it's such an underrated play overall, I think.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll try it out this year. I've never done it because I'm very risk averse, and I get I'm like, how do I not get screwed over? Other than going to card shows and meeting in person, obviously, when someone has a booth already, you kind of trust them because they're there with their stacks and with their inventory.
Right.
But other than that, I was just really curious. It's like, this was one of those topics I want to discuss with you guys, and I'm glad to hear both of you guys have good success records.
Yeah, for sure.
And not getting screwed
so
over.
So far, so good.
Nice. All right. I think that's a lot of great tips for especially newbies, especially a lot of people coming into the hobby. I think it goes both ways, right? Like with new people coming into the hobby, if they don't do their proper research, they're easy targets for scams, right?
Absolutely.
But if they do know what to look for, then it's even more fun way to get really deep into the hobby. So hopefully people learn from these tips. Okay, so I think that's a good place to wrap up this segment. We'll move on then to our next segment, Ready for Launch. So we're bringing this segment back where we each choose one or two cards that we think can really launch in value. So the card might be undervalued in our opinion, or maybe it's worth quite a bit now, but we think it still has plenty to grow, making it a sound investment. All right, so who has one they want to share first?
I'll share one.
Okay.
And this isn't something that I feel like is like a huge like potential, like you're gonna 10x your money, but I think it's like super undervalued. Even what we talked about in last week's episode with John with ratios. I'm gonna go back with basketball. I'm gonna go back with your man, Clark. Trae Young.
Trey.
I think his green
Yes.
Prism PSA 10 is so cheap right now, and I believe that it has potential to grow more than his other cards. Just because I like John was saying last week, I just see other similar comps, pop reports, and comparing it to other cards of his. I think I think they're going for between 400 and 500 for a Prism Green PSA 10, and it's around pop 600. I think there's plenty of room to grow, multiple, I say, but yeah, I think that's a great card that has future growth potential, both short term and long term.
Nice.
I like it.
Nice.
I can never argue against Trey, so it's a good pick.
I got one. I'm gonna go with stick to basketball as well. I'm gonna go with Michael Porter Jr.
I kind of knew this, John. I knew you were gonna go MPJ.
Oh, really?
I just knew it. Yeah, I just knew it.
Michael Porter Jr., man. So Michael Porter Jr. going into this year's playoffs, Jamal Murray got injured for the rest of the season, and I think everybody expected PJ to be the stud going into the playoffs and really kind of breaking out big time. Didn't do that. He wasn't even necessarily an efficient scorer. His numbers were probably below his season averages, and he probably really disappointed a ton of people. Like his cards exploded right before the playoffs started because of that hype and what people thought he was about to do. And after the playoffs ended and their disappointment, his cards start to sink once again. And I mean, why I pick Michael Porter Jr., number one, I believe in the talent. I think he is an all-world scorer, and I think he can get to that star level. Number two, we've seen this before. So anybody who follows his teammate Jamal Murray, when he had his breakout season earlier a couple of years ago, and everyone expecting him to do a lot of damage in the playoffs, and in his first ever playoffs, I think actually his first two playoffs, he was horrible. His numbers were like half of what he did in the season. His efficiencies were horrible. He was choking. He was no good, and it really caused him as a prospect and as the hype around Jamal Murray. It just completely sank. And what happened? 1 or 2 years later, Jamal Murray is an absolute. He turned it around. He's like this clutch machine during the COVID year. I don't know how many game winners he had in one playoff run, but within that one playoff run, his card, it really cemented who Jamal Murray is, and his cards exploded, and they're still up there. They haven't come down to what they were back in the day. People really truly believe in who Jamal Murray is, and I feel like that we're about to see the same thing with Michael Porter Jr. It almost seems like a identical path for Michael Porter. So I'm gonna go with Michael Porter Jr. I think he's a good buy, and I think he could definitely take off.
MPJ, yeah. You know what? I'm not gonna lie. I was big into MPJ maybe a couple seasons ago, like when he was really getting into the league, and I bought a couple of his rookie cards, Prisms.
Yeah.
And I flipped them pretty early when I 3x'd it, and then of course he had a pretty good season last year.
Right.
But I don't know. He's one of those guys. Is he injury prone? Do you think he's an injury prone player?
Yeah, so that obviously
that's what kind of scares me.
Yeah, I mean he was completely injured during his college, I think his draft year, and that's what made people.
Yeah, his draft his first year. Yeah,
That's
what caused.
They had to sort of draft him blindly, right?
But I think this next year is gonna definitely be the big year for him. But I do like the upside of MPJ for sure, absolutely. And,
for sure.
And his prices are so low that I think there's a lot of upside. There's a lot of upside to him for sure.
Yeah, I love it as an upside play. Good pick. All right, my pick is, I'm sticking with basketball too. So this is a basketball edition, ready for launch segment. I pick Stephen Curry's Bowman rookie card. I think there's a couple parallels, but there's one. I think the regular Bowman card, the white border, is numbered to 2009, and if you compare that rookie card of his to of course, the Topps rookie card. That's probably the most popular. I think a PSA 10 sold for what, 12, 13,000? Just Topps. I'm not even talking about Topps Chrome,
Right.
which is numbered to 999, which is, that's
Next level.
stratospheric right now. Yeah.
Right.
But Bowman, I think the PSA 10 could be had for like 5,000
Nice.
or so, and it's numbered to 2009. Like, we've been always saying like numbered cards over,
Right.
base cards essentially.
For sure.
I think at some point people will realize the value of just having a card that is limited,
For
right?
sure.
And I'm always looking to buy one at the price. I'm even thinking of maybe grabbing a PSA 9, so I'm saying this at my own risk. maybe the prices will jump after this episode because people are grabbing it. But I think the Bowman is a great, Steph Curry's Bowman rookie card is a great buy at PSA 10 or even PSA 9.
Right.
And so
Yeah, anything
numbered
anything Steph
cards,
Curry,
yeah.
I think is gonna rock it. I
Yeah.
think just over time, they're in that legendary state where LeBron, Steph Curry, these golden boys, man. I'm telling you, their cards are astronomical, and I don't see it slowing down. You see record prices every day of new cards. I think there's a new LeBron James auto RPA that broke another record at Golden. So yeah, the hobby's still well, I think, on the higher end stuff. So yeah, good pick on the Steph.
Yeah, good pick. I like it.
Yep.
Do you know what the pop is on the PSA 10?
Yeah, I just actually looked it up recently, and the PSA 10, there's about 130 out of 245 graded. So 130, and there's 2,000. It's numbered to 2009, so
Wow.
that gives you kind of a little bit of context.
Right.
The only thing that might bug me a little is that the PSA 9 there's 93 of them, so there's less. I like cards where the PSA 10 is
Right,
harder
yeah.
to get, where it's a lower gem
Right.
rate, right? So
But I'd still take a PSA 10 over PSA 9 any day.
Yeah.
yeah, of course.
No question.
100%.
That 9 just bugs me so much. 9s are fine though. Underrated play right there. Just nines and PSA 9s in general are so underrated because most likely
Agreed.
they're 9.5 gems, right? Most likely, the odd chance
Right.
they're not, but I like the price. There's no way there's that big of a difference in price between those two cards.
Yeah.
Like if we look at it like from just like a non-logical perspective.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
so
yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
Well, a little off topic. Have you ever taken a PSA 9 card and cracked it to get a BGS 9.5?
That's my nickname. My nickname is what you just said. I
That's
for example, I submitted an Alonzo Sapphire that ended up PSA 9ing, and then I cracked it out and resubmitted in a True Gem that BGS, right? And I do
Wow,
that with
yeah.
actually a lot that it's in the wrong slab. So for instance, I have a Luca auto, nice bold auto. The auto should be graded in my opinion, and in my opinion, it's centered great, and it's a PSA 9. I'm gonna take my chances, crack and resubmit. I was telling John, I think the price difference between a BGS 9.5 and a PSA 9 was like almost like 40% of that particular Luca, right? So for me, that was
Right.
a underrated move. It's obviously a gamble, but I've done it on multiple cards and I've been pretty successful at it. So I don't see why not, right? It's not for everybody. I think a lot of people are kind of like against it, but I don't mind doing it just because I don't think it's a PSA 9. I think it's a BGS 9.5.
It's a risk for sure, but I guess for people who are new to the hobby, the grading scales in terms of value will go PSA 10, BGS 9.5, then PSA 9.
Right.
Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I do agree with it, but it's crazy how undervalued BGS is getting to say that, because even though it goes that there's sometimes the BGS 9.5 that goes similar to a PSA 9 if it's on the if it's a min gem, for instance, if it has a 9 sub
Right.
on a BGS, right? So it's going closer to a PSA 9 as well, right? So I'd say, for the most part, it's going to wedge the gap between a PSA 10 and a PSA 9, but it's not as much as it should be.
Yeah.
Got it.
And not to mention BGS 9.5s with no subgrades. Man, those cards take a huge beating.
Oh,
They're
I
just
hate
a dump.
those.
Oh, yeah. I hate them too. I'm like, why don't you just get the subgrades?
Yeah.
You know, but
Yeah.
to each their own, I guess. It was $5 cheaper.
Is it really? Oh my gosh.
I think it's a little cheaper without the subgrades.
I'll just pay for it, man. Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. I like all our picks, and this is always a fun segment to do, so we'll do it every once in a while. Nice. Okay, now it's time for our last segment, Pick One. And as I mentioned off the top, this is one of our reoccurring segments too, where we each choose 2 players or cards that we pit against each other, and we all debate which one we'd rather invest in. So I'll go first, as promised, which I was going to say last episode before we ran out of time. But my 2 players are Trevor Lawrence, Jacksonville Jaguars, QB, Phenom rookie, versus the tried and true future Hall of Famer, Aaron Rodgers of the Green Bay Packers for at least one more season. What do you guys think?
I think I thought it was a lot easier when I first seen the matchup, but then the more I thought about it, I changed my decision. And originally, I would say Aaron Rodgers is a shoe-in. It's the safe investment, but you know me, I'm a gambling type of man. I'm not the safe type of man, and I like volatility. Volatility is my name, right? So for me, I know what happened when Zion, the whole Zion hype, it was nuts. Like, it was crazy. His prices were astronomical. Were they worth it at the time? Absolutely not. Short term, I think there's a lot of opportunity when it comes to big time, upcoming superstars or superstar potential prospects. And yeah, I think he's going to bring enough hype in the hobby where once his Prism is released, I think there's going to be a high demand for it. And obviously he's going to have to perform, but if he does perform, this is when things get kind of interesting and prices get so unreasonable. But during that time, it's not, is it worth it? It's, what do I have, and can I make profit, right? So I like the volatility on that play. So originally I was going to pick Aaron Rodgers, but I'm going to switch it. I'm going to go Trevor Lawrence because I'm going short term here and trying to make some money off of it.
Okay. I wasn't surprised at your pick because I do know you, Young. I do know you.
Mine should come as no surprise. This is super easy for me. It's Aaron Rodgers all the way. He's going to go down as one of the greatest of all time. He's going to have, he's still playing. He's got opportunities to win a ring. And, if and when he retires, it's going to be Hall of Fame bound. So I think it's an easy one here. And not only that, I you guys know me well enough too. I will not go for the first year hype. I am not sinking my money into hype train. LaMelo Ball, Justin Herbert, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to minimum wait 12 months. So this is an easy one for me, Aaron Rodgers.
Okay. It was hard for me to pick the second person. Like, I was going to originally choose Trevor Lawrence versus Tom Brady, so it would have been even easier for John. But I wanted to see if I put Tom Brady up, Hyung, who would you have chosen?
I would have chosen Brady. Because at that point, it's
that's too easy, right?
Yeah. That's the breaker. That's the kicker.
Yeah.
I just don't see the volatility with Aaron Rodgers right now. At least the amount you're going to see with Trevor Lawrence, right? But sorry, go on.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll be clear. It's not that I necessarily like Aaron Rodgers that much more as an investment. I just don't like that first year hype play. So I'll probably pick whatever choice you made other than Trevor Lawrence, I probably would have picked it.
Really?
One,
okay.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson.
I still would pick Russell Wilson, no problem.
Josh Allen.
Yep.
Josh Allen.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, Josh Allen, that's not a bad pick.
Yeah, there's
for
opportunity.
sure.
Okay. So mine is probably expected as well. I'm going Aaron Rodgers. I got to stop putting these two up. Like, I have to stop putting players out where it's like the hot prospect or the hot rookie versus the veteran, Hall of Famer veteran. Yeah, because we all know our tendencies now at this point, you know. So I'm going Aaron Rodgers for pretty much the exact same reasons John mentioned. It's more of a sound investment in my opinion. Not much of a gambler, so there's that too. And I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be actually, I could see his value still going up even beyond football. Like he seems to have the potential of being culturally relevant beyond the NFL. Like, did you see his guest hosting in Jeopardy? He did a pretty good job. Like I was really surprised. Like if I closed my eyes and just heard Aaron Rodgers host a show, like he has a little bit of Alec Trebek in him. Yeah,
I gotta see this.
And then I was so curious. Like I did some research on Google. Like somewhere I read he prepared for Jeopardy as a guest host, like he prepares for a Green Bay Packers game. Like he's just went on a marathon of watching Jeopardy shows and just like
watching film.
Watching video. Days of
so
that's good.
He's also been a bit culturally tied because he's always seemingly is always dating some kind of celebrity as well, right? So he's always sort of tied to pop culture in that way.
Yeah, actually he's engaged to, I believe, Shailene Woodley, so she's an actress, so that's right. He's definitely in that celebrity circle off the field for sure. All right, so that was my pick one. Let's go with Hyung or John. Yeah.
I'll go I'm going to go with two different collecting styles, I'd say, in my pick one. This is a real kind of question I asked myself when I started collecting. I do a bit of both, but I think some people, as you see, you'll see them kind of do one or the other. And that's particularly in baseball. You got Bowman First Chrome, so the prospect cards, versus kind of like their flagship rookie cards when they make it to the majors. Usually it's a couple years later. Both are valuable, but obviously the First Chrome goes for a lot more. It's the early release when they basically sign a pro contract. It's usually given to, I guess, the higher prospects. So when, the international prospects like Vladdy or Wander Franco or Acuna, Tatis, all those international signs, they'll be part of usually that main kind of like Bowman paper collection that you could pull these chrome autos out of. So I think a lot of people stick with one or the other. Some people go both. But yeah, what do you guys think?
John, you go first.
Ooh, I have a question. So when I first got back into this just under 2 years ago, I was looking into some baseball cards because I wanted it, nostalgic reasons. And I was super confused. This is before I met Hyung, who really helped me out in like shaping how to look for baseball cards. But I was super confused. I was just trying to look for, Vladdy Guerrero. I couldn't tell whether the Bowman First was more popular or the Topps Chrome. It seemed like the values were very similar. Is it only recently that Bowman First has clearly taken a lead in terms of value? Or was there a time where it was like 50-50?
I'd say it was always, and the leader is the Trout Bowman, the 2009, right? That kind of led the way in terms of Bowman First chromes, and obviously his Superfractor sold for the 3.96 million, right. And that kind of led the way, and ever since then, I think the Topps Chrome kind of is a great alternative, right? Because it's such a different card too, right? It's such a different card, it's such a different collection. I personally really like the rookie card, which would be like the flagship Topps Chrome, right? So
on a personal level, I think I like Topps Chrome better because, and I have a tendency to do this where I talk through both sides and then I'll make a choice at the end. Yeah.
So he chooses Bowman first.
Yeah,
Bowman.
Exactly. So Topps Chrome, I I like it better. I like the look. I like that they're in a major league uniform. It's a major league photo. Plus, in my experience so far, I have ripped primarily Topps Chrome, so I love the product. That being said, um, Bowman First clearly is the winner in terms of value. Bowman First is clearly the winner in terms of searching for grail cards for certain prospects. And watching Hyung and watching the experience that he goes through in like ripping Bowman, it is clear the demand to rip Bowman. Like, people are crazy about ripping Bowman, and I don't think that's going anywhere anytime soon. And with ripping and with the craze of ripping comes the desire to get a card, right? Like, when we look at why isn't, Crown Royale or why aren't Diamond Kings that popular, it's because not many people are ripping it. So not many people have that urge to really want the chase card. But in Bowman, everyone's ripping it. Everyone is chasing, which makes those cards just so much more valuable and under so many people's eyes. So investment, it's a clear winner. Like, it's Bowman First. Bowman First all the way.
So there we go. We were right. He did pick Bowman.
Yeah, you guys are correct, man.
Nice.
All right. I wanted you to go first because for me it's a super easy pick. It's first Bowman and over Topps flagship, just because I think it's more of a personal choice actually. When I first got back into the hobby, Bowman Chrome was the thing that I ripped right away, and it wasn't as expensive as it is now. You know what I mean? So like, I have good memories of ripping Bowman Chrome every season.
Plus you pulled a monster.
Yeah, the Juan Soto.
My friends pulled that out, but yeah, we got into it at the same time, but here's the thing, like when you pull out rookies or prospects at the time, you never know, like the value isn't there, right? Because they're
absolutely
probably not even playing in the big leagues at the time.
I'll tell you what, Clark, I ripped a bunch of 2020 Bowman last year, and obviously the Dominguez and Witt Juniors were kind of like the chase cards, right? And I remember Anthony Volpe. He was on Team USA when I coached, so I got a good look at him. But I remember his prices when Bowman released were so ridiculously cheap, and now he's one of the Yankees' top prospect. And it's one of those things where I had his a refractor auto of his just hidden in kind of like a box,
right? Yeah.
Because last year nobody really wanted Anthony Volpe, and now all of a sudden he's the Yankees, top prospect, and his prices go bonkers, right? So I've personally ripped a bunch of Bowman, and I love ripping Bowman. I think it's one of the most fun rips personally. I do agree with John too. Topps Chrome is probably my second favorite rip, I'd say, but for me it's gonna be. This is tough because my collection says opposite, right? But I did have a lot of Bowman that I kind of go back and forth because I do, as a collector, I do like their flagship rookie cards in their major league uniforms or their current uniforms. Sometimes, like for instance, as a collector, you look at Juan Soto's first Chrome, and this guy looks like he's, 13 years old, and it's just a picture of him in a shirt. He's just just standing, no action shot, nothing. He looks like a 14-year-old kid that there's no allure in it as a collector, but you see the values of these things is they're monstrous, right? So I think I think overall first Chromes are kind of like they're gaining more popularity, more people are on it because you got to get in it's a whole different game. It's called prospecting. You got literally people prospecting, following minor league baseball to kind of go in on, a prospect cheap, or, maybe they rip and they're searching for that number one prospect, right? And I'll tell you, Clark, John, last week I was at my local card store and I bought a box of, Bowman 2020. I was feeling the itch, and I woke up that morning. I was just thinking of Bobby Witt Jr. I don't know why, but I was like, I want to pull a Bobby Witt Jr. And sure enough, in the last pack was the auto. There's one auto in a hobby, and I pulled a Bobby Witt Jr. refractor
crazy,
auto.
Man.
Refractor auto.
Come on.
It was crazy. And this is why it's like, I'm a gambling man, but like this is why you gamble sometimes, because that's just an amazing hit, especially when you're able to pull something of kind of that magnitude. I mean, it's not going to be like life changing, but at the same time, it's Bobby Witt Jr. and I think it's an exciting time for him. Yeah, it's a really big card for him. So, in saying this, Bowman first chrome for me. It's a sweep.
Clean.
Yeah, I like how you mentioned, like, it's so true. You look back at those packs you ripped 2-3 years ago, and then sometimes you're surprised. You're like, oh, I have this prospect, because you had no idea who they were when you first ripped them, because you're always looking for the one or two that's already a huge prospect, and then the likelihood of hitting those are pretty slim. But then but you do get a ton of prospects in those rips, like in those packs. So hold on to them, man. You never know. When they'll be called up and how they'll do. So,
man, you guys are making me want to rip Bowman like right now. Dang.
I advise you highly not to. I just say it is a lot of misses. I'm telling you, it's a lot.
I know.
Of misses.
I mean, I've watched some breaks, and it's like, man, like the odds of you getting an absolute crap box.
It's crazy. I remember boxes were so expensive, but then I have a stack right here that I went through just on boxes where it's Volpe first chromes, just the regular base chromes, and the PSA 10s are going for 200 plus 250 US, right? And I've gathered like 20 of them just from pulling it. So at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, things are expensive, but is it all relative at the end of the day? It could be, depending
especially
on
in the future,
kind of like the set. Right. Yeah, and I think if you have a good prospect, list, I think it's not a bad rip if you get it in for a good price, right? So
right,
sure, cool,
clean sweep. All right, so I'm gonna go. Good question for you guys. We're gonna go high roller 1v1. If you guys had $100,000 to invest, are you going to choose one side? Are you going to choose rare 90s inserts, talking about like precious metal gems, EX Jambalaya, Metal Universe, Platinum Portraits, like Stadium Club, Beam Team, that kind of stuff? Or are you picking rare modern case hits, Color Blast, Kaboom, Downtown, etc., etc.? $100,000 to invest. Which side are you choosing?
What was the first? It was 90s, like
rare 90s basketball inserts. I should have been clear. Okay. Yeah, basketball inserts.
I'll go first. I go back and forth with this too, but I'm going with the 90s inserts, because here's my reasoning. Because the people that would want those 90s inserts, i.e. people our age, probably can afford some of us with great jobs who have a lot of disposable income can go after those cards, and so I think those cards could probably be sold more easily. But at the same time, this is why I'm having difficulty, because I do see some of the modern cards go for crazy numbers too, and because the hobby's booming, but then again, I think, how long can it last? Is this like all these modern cards that are going for 5-6 figures? When things settle down a little bit, I wonder if those get kind of left behind a bit, or those kind of depreciate in value a bit. So yeah, I don't know. It's a 90s insert for me, based on just playing off which demographic is willing to pay for those high-end cards.
Right.
It is tough, yeah. But you know me, I'm leaning towards the modern case hits, and I say this because I'm a marketing guy. I understand how marketing works from just the generic perspective, and when you're dealing with kind of like the high end stuff, a lot of that has to do with what is relevant in today's society, right? So for me, it's being able to leverage that with kind of like that modern case hits with current players, I really like that backing. To me, that is security. When they have, all eyes on them and their marketability is high, all those factors come into play. And for me, it's like you're able to get that in kind of like that modern, I guess, the Kabooms and Color Blasts and all those higher end stuff. And like I said, like for me, if you're buying and selling for profit, you need volatility, right? You can't be looking at, annual prices and, basing that decision off annual prices. We're looking at daily prices, and you're going to get that volatility in kind of like the modern kind of era game, right? So it's like it could be, expensive one day or overpriced, but it could be dirt cheap the next day, right? And all that matters is you have, people willing to play the game, which I think the marketing side will kind of always bring, right? So as long as they stay relevant in the game, and the modern players have it more relevant than kind of like the 90s. So for me, I'm going modern case hits because I'm a gambling man.
Nice. Yeah, I wanted to pose this question to you guys because I had a really tough time, and I've been going back and forth. On the one hand, I like 90s because we all grew up on that stuff and we eat it up. And I like how the 90s, I mean, number one, they're way out of out of my price range. There's no way I could ever afford one of them, but they're unique. And that's why you like them, right? Like there's no other EX 2001 Jambalayas. There's no other precious metal Jam Jordan. Like there's only one of every kind of subset. So it's very unique. I like that. On the other hand, the Color Blast, like kind of like Hyung was saying, in terms of marketing, it's modern. How many millions of eyes are on all of the new stuff? So I think from that perspective, it can also be a great investment. And the one thing I don't like about the modern stuff is as more, like for example, you guys know I love Color Blast, like that by default wins all. But you got a 2000, let's say you got 2019 Color Blast Luka, and then you got a 2020 Luka, and then you got a 2021 Luka Color Blast. I feel like that really makes it, the uniqueness of the Luka Color Blast start to get a bit watered down because every year you're getting the same Color Blast kind of come out. So that part kind of worries me a little bit, but I'm gonna stick with the modern. I'm taking modern because I'm with Hyung. I think the marketing, the number of eyes that are in the game right now, and how many people are paying attention to sports cards, I think these modern case hits are gonna continually, it's gonna be a thing. And you're also noticing people kind of also to the to counteract my point before, you're noticing people collecting all of the kabooms of like all the years of the LeBron kabooms or all of the years of Kobe's or all of the Color Blast Lukas. Like people are starting to collect that as a unique set of their own. So I think there's that potential too. So I'm gonna go with modern, but man, I can see why this one would go both ways. Like both are amazing. Yeah,
that was a really tough one for sure. I feel like we're getting more creative each time with our pick ones every time we do this segment. So it's always even more challenging. So we'll keep doing this segment for sure.
Yep.
Hopefully it's great for the listeners as well. All right, that really wraps up this episode. Thanks as always to everyone who tunes in week after week to hear us chat about sports cards. Like I said, if you have any topic or issue that you think is worth discussing, please reach out to us at 5cardguys on Instagram, or you can email us at hello@5cardguys.com. We'd love to hear from you. Until next week then, take care everyone. Hey, thanks for listening to Cards to the Moon. We'd really appreciate you subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can also connect with each of us on Instagram at 5cardguys, or you can follow Hyung at Integrity Sports Cards or John at TradeU at Recess. You can also check us out at 5cardguys.com. Thanks again, and hope to connect soon.